Anyone else remember this game? Because I didn't. I get a lot of people requesting me to review X or Y game, but hands down, the game I frequently see the most requests for is Mario Kart 7. And every time someone asks me to do a review on this game, my immediate reaction is always, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Then I proceed to forget about it once again 5 seconds later. Right out the gate, I want to make it clear that me forgetting the game exists has absolutely nothing to do with the game's quality. The main reason I forget about Mario Kart 7 is more because of the console it released on itself. The 3DS is a fine console, but it's definitely a handheld I have very little attachment to. When the handheld first launched, it was $250, which was pretty high for a portable system. Adjusted for inflation, even though it's only been a little over 10 years, that would be roughly $330 now. So like the price of a Switch. Even when it got its price dropped to $170 half a year later, the reality was I was a high school student that wasn't really playing Nintendo games anymore. And yeah, by the time I did get a 3DS, around the time Pokemon came out, I was then a college student, busy with, you know, college things. Because of that, the only games I ever played on my 3DS were Pokemon and Animal Crossing, because those just so happened to be the games that my friends in college were playing. All this to say, Mario Kart 7 is the only Mario Kart I did not play around the time of its launch. But after playing it for this review, honestly, I think I kind of missed out. I mean, okay, it's not like the best in the series or anything, but if I had played this at launch, I might have thought it was. Well, until Mario Kart 8 came out, but I'll get into that in a bit. Beyond having great presentation given the hardware, Mario Kart 7 innovates your traditional Mario Kart formula in a lot of unique ways. The most obvious innovation is the inclusion of the hang gliders and the underwater racing. These were the big selling points. I mean, it's on the front of the box. The glider, I think, is hands down one of the best additions we've seen to the series. Basically, when you go off certain jumps, a glider will pop out of your kart, allowing you to move in all directions, which really expands the ways in which a track can be designed. Although it would seem that not everyone is as much of a fan of it as I am. I've 100% heard people say it's not Mario Kart, which is ironic because oftentimes the people using that argument are the people who love the bikes and Wii. A glider attached to your kart? Now that's taking it too far. But using a bike in a game called Mario Kart? Now that's Mario Kart. So when it comes down to an argument like that, all I really hear is, the Mario Kart I grew up with didn't have it and I'm not used to it, so... I mean, the series can't remain dormant forever. Features like this are what keep the new Mario Karts interesting. Not to mention, I can't see how anyone could perceive this edition as anything but a good thing when it opens up the gameplay and course designs to so many unique possibilities. I mean, let's be brutally honest here. In the majority of your races of Mario Kart, your biggest decision is, do I turn left or right? By adding the glider, you are essentially incorporating another access to the gameplay. So not only are you still dodging and maneuvering by steering left and right, but you have to make the on-the-spot decisions of sinking down to gain speed, or sacrificing speed to gain elevation, which in turn can lead you to taking the lead via a shortcut. Shortcuts like this gap you can cross in Neo Bowser City prove how this mechanic only allows for more decisions you, the player, have to make, and how the tracks can be designed to integrate said decisions. The only thing I don't like, in Mario Kart 8 is especially guilty of this, are those segments on some of the tracks where your glider comes out and you can't even move, making it more of an aesthetic than anything else. But you can't pretend this is a new problem when most of the series will have multiple tracks that will have something that launches you up, and you kind of just have to wait there and watch until you land. In fact, if anything, the glider can rectify these segments when the tracks are remade by allowing you some control. Royal Raceway in 64, for example. Again, we have a jump that has you flying forward and you just kind of wait until you land. In Mario Kart 8, however, with the new glider controls, you now have full control of this part and are tasked with dodging hot air balloons while airbound. A definite upgrade if you ask me. Look, here on Silent Hawk, we like to encourage change and innovation. I mean, the last thing I'd want to do is endorse stagnation. Come on, what do I look like to you, huh? A Pokemon fanboy? No, those don't exist! But then there's the underwater stuff, and this is more... It's pretty weird since, for years, you're instinctively taught not to go in the water. But then 7 came out and was just like, okay, literally rewire your brain and forget everything you know because water equals good now. The payoff really isn't worth it in my opinion, since all driving underwater means is that you're slower and it's harder to control. It's not a bad gimmick, but compared to the gliding, the underwater stuff doesn't open itself up to as many unique track opportunities. The other big selling point of 7 was the kart customization. Starting with Double Dash, you were able to select your kart, but it was taken even further here by allowing you to individually select your body, wheels, and glider. Most of these are unlocked at random whenever you collect a certain number of coins during your races, which, yeah, not my favorite method of unlocking stuff, but the variety of parts here is still impressive. The customization feature really allows you to perfectly fine-tune your vehicle to your playing experience. A great idea on paper, halfway there in execution. The biggest thing to take into consideration is how much more complicated this makes just booting up a quick game of Mario Kart. Accessibility is a huge component of Mario Kart's success, so adding this layer of complication might be overwhelming to certain types of players that just want to quickly jump into a race without having to look at a box of stats. I mean, what do all these stats even mean? Speed and acceleration are pretty self-explanatory, but like, what's off-road? How fast you drive when going off the track? I mean, it's faster to just stick to the track regardless, so this seems like a pretty pointless stat. Granted, all of these stats were in Mario Kart Wii. In fact, the Wii had a bigger table of stats to look at, but there it was just pick a kart and go. If you don't like one, try another until you find your favorite. Whereas in 7, if you decide that you do not like your current kart combination, I would imagine that many players won't know what to change, especially when you take into consideration that there are hidden stats such as mini turbo and stability. There's a lot more manual tinkering you need to deal with. In spite of all of that, I don't dislike the customization system. In fact, I think it's a cool idea, but especially for future entries like Mario Kart 8 where multiplayer is more accessible, some pre-made setups or the ability to save a combination of parts would have gone a long way. All of the comments I'm making are only at the expense of Mario Kart being a quick pick up and play game though, which I'm not even sure was a huge priority for Nintendo given this is the only handheld Mario Kart without a versus mode or a quick race mode that allows you to pick any track and go. This might seem like a small deal to some, but being able to just play a single race, I'd argue, is a pretty invaluable feature for a portable game like this. I mean, not that it really affects me since I'm playing this game at home way after its prime, but to not have it is a strange omission. Speaking of strange omissions, this is the only Mario Kart to not have Waluigi after he was first added in Double Dash, which is even more insulting here since one of the retro tracks included in this game is Waluigi Pinball. So a Waluigi map? That's all good. Waluigi as a character? Get the hell out of here. I can't even believe you'd suggest that mustachioed freak. But hey, who am I to judge? They clearly had to make room for great new characters like the Bee from Mario Galaxy? Yeah, you know, the very same one that was so big you could climb it, now small enough to participate in a go-kart race. I asked for this? I didn't ask for this. Mario Kart 7 has, hands down, the strangest character roster of all time. There's only 16 characters, and they're not the ones you would expect. Shy Guy is a fully playable character for the first time instead of just being used for DS's download play. Lakitu takes a break from holding that flag to join the race. Then you got, like, a Wiggler? That's weird. This is also the series' first appearance of Metal Mario, who I'm going to fully blame for the influx of clone characters we saw in 8 because really, why isn't this just a skin? What, are you telling me Mario and Metal Mario are two separate people now? That doesn't even make any sense. Also, if you're a complete narcissist, the Mii is back so you can race as yourself. Weird character roster, you have to unlock Wario. But hey, at least there's no babies. Oh, also new to the 7 is a first person mode? Holy shit, it's like I'm really there. That's great and all, but how does the racing itself feel? Mostly good. Being completely transparent here, the merit in which I am judging 7 is kind of unfair since I instinctively want to compare it to the handling in Mario Kart 8. Why? Well, because Mario Kart 8 is 7's closest comparison. If you've played 8, you have a pretty good idea of what 7 feels like. Honestly, the comparison is akin to the similarities between Smash 4 and Ultimate. Smash 4 is Ultimate's closest comparison, and while both feel good, Ultimate just feels a tad better. Mario Kart 7 and 8 are the same way. 7 feels good, but 8 feels better. Not all the differences are bad ones. I do like how you can hold a drift even while slowing down, but then you got stuff like the turning, which feels a bit sluggish. I don't want that statement to be confused with the actual speed of the racing. From what I can tell, the speed seems pretty comparable to what we see in other games, but something about the drifting feels less responsive. It's hard to articulate and even harder to showcase. This is definitely just something you have to try for yourself to see. Play a couple of races in Mario Kart 8 and then switch back to this and you'll definitely notice a difference in how the drifting feels. There are also little things I'm not a fan of, like when you get hit by certain items, you knock over backwards, which can really screw you over like it did to me here. Again, I don't want to give the impression that it controls bad. It controls great, and if anything, I'm being unfair to 7 here, but it's hard to not compare it to 8, which I'd argue is a perfected 7, especially when previous entries had such a distinctive playstyle. I feel more inclined to compare this to 8 than I do the older stuff. This is also a very easy Mario Kart Kart game. On 50 or 100 especially. It feels like they might as well just hand you the trophy for selecting them on the menu. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather a game be too easy than it be like Wii, where there was so much rubber banding, you'd swore you just walked into an Office Depot. But compared to something like DS, this feels like a cakewalk. Which, again, maybe being unfair to 7 here. Obviously, these games are designed to be played by all demographics, so I probably shouldn't be sitting here basically telling the little Timmies across the world to get good, just so I can be challenged as a guy in his 20s. That being said, the more casual playthrough can be attributed to the fact that there's hardly any item bullshit this time around. It's all pretty well balanced, and the items we see in 7, it's a strong selection. The newcomers from Wii have all been removed, those of course being the Pow Block, the Mega Mushroom, and the Thundercloud. I think removing them was a smart move because without complete overhauls on how they function, such as how Tour changed the Mega Mushroom to be more of a defensive item, I think there would be too much overlap with other items. I mean, in terms of effectiveness, the Mega Mushroom is just a worse star, the Pow Block is just a worse lightning, and the Thundercloud, well, the Thundercloud just sucks. In their place are the brand new Fire Flower, Super Leaf, and Lucky 7. Starting with the Fire Flower, some people will try to, actually, about it being in Double Dash first, but those people are 100% wrong since that was a completely different item instead called the Fireball. It was similar, but even the manual referred to it as something else. Biggest difference between the Fireball and the Fire Flower was the Fireball was actually good. Okay, the Fire Flower isn't a terrible item or anything, but in Double Dash, the Fireball had a wide spread, which basically guaranteed you'd hit something. By comparison, the Fire Flower only shoots forward and has a limited amount of time the item is active. So you basically just mash the button and hit absolutely nothing. I genuinely have an easier time hitting opponents with a green shell, and even when you do hit them, it just lightly spins them out opposed to making them topple over. I don't mind its inclusion, but making the fireballs bigger or giving them a more pronounced effect on opponents could validate this one. Or hell, just make it a spread attack like in Double Dash to differentiate it further from other items. We also get the Lucky 7, which is somehow simultaneously one of the best items we've seen and the worst. It's one of the best because it gives you a star, a green shell, a red shell, a blooper, a bomb, a mushroom, and a banana. I mean, that's a lot of manpower. But in my opinion, it's also one of the worst because really, this has to be one of the most uninspired ideas for an item ever. This is like the epitome of the little Jimmy item. Some kid's dad that actually worked at Nintendo had to have gone home to his son and was like, "All right, Jimmy, what kind of item would you like to see in Mario Kart?" "All of them. You get all of them at the same time." You can't really make the best use of each item when you're given all of them at the same time. So what ends up happening is you just mash the item button, which essentially just turns this into a blooper star combo that sometimes also hits a player ahead of you that you were probably just gonna hit with your star anyway. This next one has to be one of the most contentious items ever, the Super Leaf. It's another timed item, much like the Fire Flower, and while it's active, your cart will sprout a tail you can use to deflect items and knock out nearby drivers. I see a lot of slander thrown at this item, and you know what? F it. If no one else is gonna stand up for this thing, I guess it's gotta be me. In comparison to some other newer items, I mean, yeah, sure, the effects seem kinda whatever, but I view the leaf in the same way I view something like a banana. Is the banana the best item? Not even close. But it serves its purpose well, and I certainly wouldn't want Nintendo to get rid of it. And much like the banana, this is an item you get towards the front of the pack, which is an aspect I rarely hear its detractors bring up. Because let's say you're in first, right? What are you realistically getting? A banana? Maybe a green shell? Adding a Super Leaf to the selection of first place items seems like an upgrade if you ask me. It can do some work. I mean, look at this. In one fell swoop, I got rid of his red shell and knocked him over. This is not a bad item. It's a shame the item didn't come back for Mario Kart 8 because the irony is that if there's any Mario Kart where this item would have made the most sense, it would have been Mario Kart 8. Because a slight downside to the leaf here is that unlike a shell or banana, it takes up your item slot, prohibiting you from picking up another item while it's active. Whereas in 8, all of the items work like that anyway. I mean, if nothing else, they should have brought it back for battle mode. I mean, it's better than the feather. Honestly, not sure why this item gets such a bad rap. Again, as far as first place items are concerned, I definitely think this is one of the best, and I'd totally be down to see it return in another Mario Kart. Like seriously, I've heard so much talked about the Super Leaf, but the blooper? What, is everyone okay with this one? The obnoxious item that is practically anti-Mario Kart in design? Whereas most Mario Kart items are designed to even out the playing field by giving newbies a fighting chance, the blooper is extremely detrimental to newcomers that don't know the course, and practically useless against veterans since they likely already have the layout memorized. Whenever I get the blooper, I always get so frustrated because it's like, great, you know, statistically speaking, it was more likely for me to get a triple red shell, which is basically one of the best items ever, but you know, I'm really glad I got this instead. Right there, that, to me, is what makes the blooper worse than the Super Leaf. Because when you get a a leaf in first place. It's like, was that really a loss? In first place, all you want is a defensive item anyway, and the leaf is a pretty good one. But the blooper, and this is true in every Mario Kart, I believe, in each position where it is possible to roll a blooper, it is also possible to roll a triple red. And if you actually think you want a blooper more than a triple red, look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, you're a f***ing idiot. The payoff for a triple red is almost immediate. You can use it both offensively and defensively. They're not terribly nerfed by maps of water or boost, and they're just as effective against someone who knows the map as they are against someone who doesn't. The blooper just sucks, okay? It's like the equivalent of the obnoxious darkness gimmick you see in platformers, except put into a racing game. Are there actually any advocates for this thing? Or do people just defend it because it happens to be in their favorite Mario Kart? In fact, one of my biggest critiques of Mario Kart 7 is just how common the blooper is. Like, no joke, it seemed like on average, I was getting hit by 2 of these per race. I am almost positive this is the Mario Kart where they're the most frequent, and it was the one big thing that nearly prevented me from enjoying this game. It is genuinely that common in 7. Fortunately, it was not bad enough to prevent me from enjoying the new tracks, because 7 has some great variety here. Shy Guy Bazaar might be one of my favorite Mushroom Cup tracks ever. Maps like Piranha Slide and Music Park showcase a ton of creativity. Tracks like Rock Mountain or Wario's Shipyard are just flat out good. And for the first time in the series, we have huge tracks with the implementation of checkpoints opposed to laps. The tracks in question being Woohoo Loop, Maka Woohoo. Yes, there are 2 tracks based on Woohoo Island, both of which being very similar as you might expect. Probably my only critique of the new maps, despite me liking both of them. But the final map to implement checkpoints is this game's Rainbow Road, and what a fantastic decision that was. This is the most ambitious Rainbow Road we've ever seen, and nothing else even comes close. You're circling around planets, driving on the rings of Saturn, doing tricks on wobbly tracks above the moon, driving on the moon, there are conveyors that speed you up, this sonic-ass tunnel with rotating boosters, and to cap it all off, you glide through the atmosphere dodging asteroids. I mean, what a journey, man. The checkpoints really sell the scope here. And hey, the retro tracks are sold as well. Tons of fan favorites such as Coconut Mall, Waluigi Pinball, Daisy Cruiser, Airship Fortress. Undoubtedly, the best part of the selection here, though, is since the series saw a slight overhaul with the addition of gliders and underwater racing, they were able to reinvent their classic maps in some great ways, such as finally giving a purpose to that jump to nowhere in Koopa Beach, or straight up having racers drive in the water in Koopa Cape. Another pleasant surprise for me was how solid the battle mode was. I wouldn't say this is the best battle mode, but it's a huge step up from what we saw in Wii. First of all, teams are optional this time around, thank God. Other than that, I guess it's basically what we saw in Wii. Same 2 modes, same expected settings, but the team thing is a bigger deal than it may seem, because now you're not reliant on whether or not your partners suck when it comes to winning a match. The map selection here is smaller. This is the lowest number of new battle tracks ever introduced into a Mario Kart. Well, I mean, unless you're counting Mario Kart 8's whopping 0, but it's a decent selection. Woohoo Town might be one of my all-time faves, and adding jumps to glide across the center lava in Big Donut greatly improves that map. My only 3 gripes of the battle mode are: 1, you're still only able to play time matches. 2, you cannot set the number of matches to play, it's always 4. Once you do your 4th match, the game sort of just says, alright, you've had your fun, get out. Lastly, for the coin battle, in a kind of dumb design choice, the amount of coins you can collect cap out at 10. So after you collect 10, there's essentially no reason to put yourself in the center of a battlefield just to lose. So I'd argue the most strategic thing to do after that is camp, and that's no fun. I mean, yeah, sure, you don't have to camp, but you also don't have to win. This is the part of the video where I was going to be like, welp, can't comment on the online because it's not up anymore. But if you've been making jokes about how you're impressed Twitter hasn't imploded yet, then you'll be even more surprised to hear that Mario Kart 7 still has fully functional online play. Okay, why the hell was the Wi-Fi in Wii shut down if 7 is still up? I can almost guarantee the Wii Mario Kart would still have a more active online scene than 7 if both were still online. I mean, hell, Mario Kart Wii already has the bigger online scene despite the official servers being shut down. If you've played the Wii version, it's the same basic setup where you can easily jump into a race with a bunch of randos, and you win or lose points tied to an overall online score you have. It's fun, works well, but as you may expect, the online scene is pretty dead these days. Frankly, like I said, I'm shocked shocked the servers are still up at all. But yeah, with that aside, that is Mario Kart 7. There isn't a huge modding scene here like what we saw in the Wii, and in general, 7 might have the smallest fan base these days out of any Mario Kart post Double Dash. Like I said at the start of the video, this is the only entry in the series I will straight up forget about time to time, which admittedly is not fair to everything 7 does. It introduced one of the best innovations we've seen in the entire series with the addition of the gliders. The kart customization, while it could be streamlined in the future, is a fantastic idea that allows players to fine-tune their racing experience. The checkpoint system opened up the track designs to be more than just a closed-off circuit, not to mention, the tracks in general are real good in 7, especially its version of Rainbow Road. The new items are, at their worst, decent, and at their best, something I really hope returns to future installments. Battle mode is a blast and is a step up from Wii, and ultimately, this is just a really solid Mario Kart. I'd even go as far as to say it's a top 5 game on the 3DS. So if you're like me and have forgotten about this game from time to time, let this video be a reminder to pay your respects to 7 and all that it did for the series. It's a great game, a great addition to the series, and will undoubtedly continue to shape the future of the series in creative and interesting ways. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I'd like to give a shout out to patrons such as Epic Knudsen, Amanda Guth, Austin Games, Cameron Tayo, David Marchesi, David Pacheco, Drew Kellenberger, Gameplayer 1500, Ian, Jeffrey P. Long, Johnny Pressional, Kinzel Tien, Victoria Mars, Sud C. Diamond, and Rami Batter. Again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.